The very enthusiastic crowd in the room with us in studio in New York, and everybody tuning in around the country on Facebook Live and on Zoom. As Samantha said, my name is Sunsara Taylor. I'm a co-initiator of Refuse Fascism and a writer for Revolution newspaper revcom.us. This is Sarah Rourke. Also on the editorial board of Refuse Fascism, a former Hillary 2016 campaigner and a writer and an artist.
Yep.
Say anything else?
I'm supposed to be doing my comic, but I'm doing this instead because how do you do a comic in a world that's been taken over by fascists?
Okay. Yeah. That's our new gift. So what we're going to do today on this webinar is we're going to talk about, we culminated the first 5 weeks of the launch of the Out Now movement. We're going to talk about what we accomplished and why we did this. And we're going to talk about the big challenges in front of us, what we have yet to accomplish. And we're going to get into some of the problems and the obstacles we have to scale together, and plans for meetings that we're holding all across this country this Sunday, November 24th. If you are not planning to go to the meetings this Sunday, you should change your plans. You should be there. You should invite everybody you know to come. We'll talk more about that because we have really important problems to tackle together and plans to make together. So we're going to get into all of that, including the plans. Samantha was talking about December disruptions, big ideas to put Trump, Pence out now on the map and draw forward the people to create the kind of political crisis from below necessary to remove this fascist regime from power. So, and we're going to have some guests along the way. So just to get us started, let me restate. For anybody who is tuning in for the first time, and for all of us just to stay grounded in why we're doing this. The Out Now movement, initiated by Refuse Fascism, is a movement to bring people together into the streets in mass, nonviolent political protest that grows and comes back day after day and grows from hundreds to thousands and ultimately to millions who stay in the streets until our single unifying demand is met. The Trump-Pence regime must go now. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. And we see the need to create this kind of political crisis from below because we're facing a fascist regime in power. And this is a very serious threat to humanity. It's the political program of fascism. And we've seen this escalate in the last week. Every week it's escalating. This is the nature of fascism. This past week, Donald Trump pardoned 3 war criminals, which is both a green light to troops to carry out crimes against humanity, assassinations of civilians in other parts of the world. It's also worth considering the message this sends and what it's preparing for when you have a regime in power, Trump in power, who is over and over again invoked the notion of not leaving office, even if he loses the election. He said, I have the military, I have the cops, I have the bikers for Trump, I have a rough crowd. And he's made all these notions repeatedly. I don't like to use the word jokes because he says they're jokes, but they're not funny.
Not really.
Yeah, about not leaving office. And so what does it mean if say he lost the election, or say he was impeached, but he refuses to leave? And you have a situation where the military or the courts tried to enforce that. Well, here he's building up a section of the military to be with him and to take extra legal and very violent and horrific actions with his sanctions. So this is a very dangerous thing just in the last week. You also had the Supreme Court look like it's going to end DACA, the protection for millions of dreamers. You have new regulations being stripped away from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, that would pretty much gut Clean Water and Clean Air Acts, which were already not measuring up to the climate destruction that we face. So just about any day, any week, you look at this regime and it is barreling ahead, imposing horrific policy and program that will destroy the lives of many, many people here and around the world. And that's part of the fascism. It's also the qualitative change in the form of rule. So that the space in society for people to stand up and protest and obstruct these injustices and fight against them from the street level, but also from within the halls of power is being demolished by this regime. And that's part of fascism too, is that it's an openly terroristic form of rule that shuts down and eviscerates separation of powers, rule of law, any constraints on the executive to impose its will. And the lesson of history is that you have to stop fascism before it becomes too late. So this is the Out Now movement, is to move people from very different political perspectives to take to the streets now, the way we see all over the world, before it becomes too late. So this is our mission. This is what brings us together. And this is what we began to launch with 5 weeks of protest. So
right.
I'll have a few more things to say about the 5 weeks of protest and what we accomplished, but I want to hand it over to Sarah, who has a piece prepared.
Yep.
Which will be on the website soon. Sarah Rourke, you should always read the refusefascism.org website for her pieces. So.
And Coco Das.
And Coco Das.
Search on Coco Das too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I wrote a piece that was kind of summing up lessons from this 5 week launch that we were doing, this big push to get Out Now, hashtag Out Now, out into the public. So I'll go ahead and read this. We are now 3 years into the Trump regime, and its crimes have not slackened off. On the contrary, they've multiplied in number, depth, and speed. Even the beginning of impeachment hearings in the House has only hardened their determination to destroy human rights and rule of law. As the fascists in our executive branch redouble their efforts to destroy any mechanism that might take power out of their hands, we at Refuse Fascism decided to take the momentous step of launching a multi-week, multi-city campaign of protest, with the object of modeling and establishing the basis for the only kind of force that can actually end this national and global nightmare: a sustained, disruptive, nonviolent mass movement of the people, with enough determination and numbers to shut down business as usual until our demand that this illicit regime be removed is met. Our members and volunteers have been exercising their determination and creativity in many ways in order to place a crucial truth before the American people: that this is quite literally a fascist regime, rapidly destroying democracy, and no regime that is destroying democracy can be legitimate or allowed to continue, and then challenge people to act in accordance with the truth. Oh. The task was all the more difficult because the truth we are bringing is the one everyone needs to hear, not the one everyone wants to hear. The holidays are upon us all. Impeachment hearings are capturing the breathless attention of our more politically minded loved ones and neighbors. The signal to noise ratio steadily increases in favor of noise. Even at this very late hour, many are telling themselves, and being told by eager pundits on MSNBC and elsewhere, that Trump is being successfully contained or is even on his way out. We can't underestimate in such a moment how important it was to do what we've just done. We put the demand Trump Pence out now on the map, not before all of society, but in a wide-reaching way. In major media outlets, including Newsweek and CNN, we broke the sound barrier and got this message out in front of hundreds of thousands. We were publicly endorsed by respected people of conscience, such as Cornel West and Yusuf Salaam. We also have the support of Arturo O'Farrell and other prominent musicians. We were a live, high visibility example of exactly the sort of sustained program of protest we're calling for. One that comes back and back without stopping until it's accomplished its aim. The story unfolded differently in different cities, with groups ranging from half a dozen to a couple hundred, and roughly 500 coming out repeatedly and consistently over the 5 weeks of the push, sometimes stepping out for the very first time in brand new places. The repeat attendees especially are a welcome and crucial development, because they and their tenacity are the forming core of a true movement base. One with the solidity needed to stabilize our gains, develop them, and carry them forward. And one that can work with the much larger inflow and outflow of those whose commitment is still embryonic, but has the potential to grow into so much more. Many people who never realized that a way to end this nightmare might lie within their own hands, and they don't have to passively witness their own society's fascist collapse, heard that message for the very first time. Others who were already aware or half aware had it sharply brought back to front of mind, even as they watched the sad limits of the official process underway become more exposed than ever. Organizations doing their own internal wrestling about the troubling shortcomings of the anti-Trump resistance are paying new attention to what we do. We know that our message connected with some of our fellow Americans in a very deep way, because we have a new wave of people coming forward to join us, which is excellent news because we need them. What we don't have still is the thousands and ultimately millions this is going to take to finally succeed in compelling the removal of the Trump-Pence regime before it's too late for humanity. This is a challenge that all of us who refuse to accept a fascist America must put to ourselves now. Too many lives, in fact, the fate of the planet itself, rests on our not merely fighting the good fight, but finding the way to win, to bring an anguished public to lose its adjustment to and normalization of the atrocity in progress, and rise up in broad coalition to drive the fascist Trump-Pence regime from power. Now I'm going to speak to some of the things that we've observed over these last 5 weeks, new and old organizers alike. Why has that larger effort fallen short up to now? In part, because there are many of our fellow Americans that we haven't yet connected with. If it were easy to do, it would already have been done. We're also trying to break through the fog of powerful political narcotics, as well as the sheer human denial of inconvenient realities. It's become sadly clear that people simply will not embrace the truth of this threat and what it will take to end it, as long as they still have one shabby lie or shiny distraction left to cling to. They would rather tell themselves fables about how the system will correct itself, the opposition will discover a long-lost conscience, the institutions will hold, the grown-ups in the room know exactly what to do and have it handled. The impeachment will solve everything. The election will solve everything. At any rate, it's all going to be okay somehow, without our having to do anything uncomfortable or unusual. In December, we will continue our program of bold and unrelenting actions, but add elements designed to target this daze and denial head on. With love, rigor, and a commitment to reality as it is, not as we wish it were, we must develop and enact polemics, dialogues, and interventions that disrupt the trance and make room for an entirely different conversation. One that's still fraught and difficult, but carries an actual hope for humanity. This won't and can't be a passive process of receiving instructions from organizers who receive instructions from committees. Just the opposite. Beginning with our meetings of Sunday, November 24th, we'll be putting our heads together, actively soliciting your problem solving, bringing our strongly diverse skills and perspectives to bear on the obstacles that still stand in the way of people recognizing this need and taking up this call as their own. Each of us has our own unique experience of trying to wake up those we know and encounter in our communities, sometimes as a lone voice, sometimes not. And these encounters have taught us more than we often realize. The time has come to assemble these puzzle pieces and then proceed directly from the new overarching understanding they bring us into forging plans for the weeks ahead that are specifically consciously directed by that understanding. These December disruptions will focus both on the actions themselves and on the ways they can become part of more fully embracing our members, both the new ones and the ones who are newly growing in understanding and commitment and finding their homes and roles within this movement. Every person we've brought forward over these last 5 weeks has unique talents that we lacked before, personal and social circles we might never have reached otherwise, and strength they may not even know they possess. These people who have the courage and insight to join this effort in a phase when so many others still remain inert are the ones who can be forged into the strong core our organization needs, a core resilient enough to multiply in stage after stage until the full numbers are achieved that we know we must have to make our inescapable need and demand a reality. Trump, Pence, out now. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America.
All right.
Thank you.
So, you know, I think it's worth it to talk just a couple minutes, and then we'll get our first guest on the line about, we really, tonight in this webinar and this Sunday across the country in these meetings, that we really want to invite everybody who's been part of this movement, new and old, into. We need to get into and appreciate two things that may seem completely opposite to each other, but are actually, they're part of the contradiction that we find ourselves in the middle of. At one and the same time, we have done something that is incredibly, incredibly significant and precious. We have put, as you said, the Out Now movement has established itself. It's embryonic, it's fragile, we all wish it was bigger, but it actually, look, across the country, to have a movement at this time with a fascist regime in power, hammering ahead at imposing its program, and most of the country sleepwalking through it, except for those who are cheerleading for it, who are out there hunting Latinos or terrorizing the campus of Syracuse with racist manifestos, genocidal manifestos, and students are terrified. Or, you know, I've read this report of a Orthodox Jewish man who was stabbed outside a synagogue today or yesterday, right up north of the city here. This is happening. Plus, by the state, the caging of children, the separating of families, the stripping away of rights. And either there's the people cheerleading this, they're unleashed, they're passionate, or far too many people are going along. So in the face of that, to have brought forward protests, and not just a one-off, but 5 weeks in a row with people coming back week after week.
Right.
And yes, we had about 500 people across the country. That's not nearly enough, but within that, there's cores who have been coming back repeatedly. This is precious.
Right.
This is precious if we look at what we have to accomplish. And we did, as you said, we broke the sound barriers, not enough, but we got in CNN, we got in the news, we got in different places, and we've begun to model something.
Right.
So at one and the same time, here's what I'm trying to get to. At one and the same time, we really have to take stock and appreciate and nurture and learn everything we can from what we've established. At the same time, we have the biggest challenges yet in front of us, and you were talking about this too. You're not going to drive out a fascist regime with 500 people, you know.
If only.
you know, and it's the fact that people don't know yet about this movement. That's, you know, many people who might jump at the chance just haven't heard about it, which is something we have to address. But it's also that people are resistant. I liked you said this in your piece, and we've been talking about it a lot. You said, you know, as long as people have a lie and a delusion they can cling to, we have to disabuse them of a lot of the illusions that they have and win them to see that you have to join the struggle.
Right.
And you have to come into the streets. So this is the challenge that we want to wrestle with in the meetings across the country on Sunday, and that we want to begin to wrestle with here on this webinar. And we want to get into sort of what's holding people back and how do we crack that open.
Right.
And how do we do it both in the big ways, actually creating waves in society where one overnight we can get thousands of people debating, well, maybe the impeachments won't take care of it. Oh man, the impeachments are on really narrow ground. You know, they're only about national security. There's all these other issues. How did I find myself cheering for national security when I care about the fascism? You know, how do we get it so that through our actions that we're prying open that debate and changing thinking on that, but also on the one-on-ones.
Yes.
So we have to be wrangling with this. So, you know, this, and then we have a plan for, which we'll say more about soon, but for December disruptions for specific protests and for a type of protest, we want a lot of people to get creative and come up with ideas on. So that's the contradiction. What we have to appreciate, and what we don't have, we have to go to work on with urgency. So.
What can I say but 100% cosign?
Well, we've been talking about this a lot.
Yeah. We kind of got all our argument out beforehand, and now we reached some shared understandings about the about the last 5 weeks over overall our conversations and wranglings and arguments. And what we're doing in the headquarters is what you guys are doing in the chapters and are going to be doing in the chapters. And that's crucial. And it's especially crucial that we be connecting chapter to chapter, chapter to headquarters, because if you talk to people about what they encountered, and we're going to be talking to some of our organizers and volunteers about what they encountered, you will notice a lot of common themes. Everybody's experience of this struggle has been unique, but when it comes to the wall we're all banging our heads against, a lot of it looks, it becomes very familiar. And I think that the more we come together to look at these shared problems in the struggle, the more it becomes inevitable that we will find the ways to crack through.
So I think what we want to do is we want to bring our first guest in. Anna Maria, I think you're on the telephone with us. If you are, hey, I see you unmuting yourself. Welcome, Anna Maria. Are you there?
I am so excited to be on your webinar this evening, talking about this magnificent movement, national movement, national out now movement that I am just so honored to be a part of, and to encourage others to stand up for what is right, what is truthful, and not to be afraid.
Well, we're really happy to have you with us tonight, Anna Maria. And I just want to, for people who are viewing, Anna Maria is from New York and has been part of the protests that have been taking place up in Harlem, the Out Now protests in Harlem every week for the last 3 weeks that have, in New York, we've had rallies at Union Square, and then in Harlem, and they've marched and met up in front of Trump Tower. And so she's been organizing that. She's a retired educator. And my understanding, what I've heard a little bit from you, but also from others in the New York chapter, is that you have been taking this Out Now movement out to many different parts of the city and many different kinds of people. And I think it'd be very helpful to learn, A, from that experience, and B, what are you running into, positive and negative, that we should all be trying to solve together?
Well, on the positive side, which I'll go to first, because that's what energizes me, is that as I am going to other areas, such as organizations, and everywhere that I am connecting with people, I am talking about the national movement, which is the national Out Now movement that all of us should be involved with. Trump, Pence, out now. And the everyone is agreeing. It's beautiful to see how everyone is agreeing that this is a movement that needs to be. The thing is, how do we get the feet in the streets?
Yeah,
right.
And I think one of the issues is, the biggest issue is the fact that it is cold now. It's cold.
Right.
I think that but I am so glad that we started this movement now, because it gives us the opportunity to do just what you were both speaking about earlier, getting people to notice that this movement is on. Getting the flyers as we hand them out, people are literally coming back and say, oh, let me have one. So it's really awesome. I mean, I am so energized as I'm working with this national Out Now movement, Trump, Pence, out now. I am so excited about it. And I want to take this time to publicly thank all the young persons who brought this to the fore, their insight to see how imperative it is that we move now and not wait for 2020.
In your own view, and this may, I think this will feed in, you just ended by saying and not wait till 2020. I do wonder if you could share why you think that is not an option.
It is not an option to wait to 2020. I personally had my vote not counted on 3 different occasions throughout the years. And I never knew that that had happened until I received a letter that actually told me your vote didn't count. And I then began to go to the Board of Elections meetings in New York City every Tuesday at 1:30. They have their meetings for the Board of Elections. And I cannot tell you how displeased we were in 2016 in the primaries when my vote last time did not count for Bernie Sanders. And not only we went to the Board of Elections, the number of people that went and the media that was there to address the 250,000 voters in Brooklyn, New York. That's where Brooklyn in the House, their vote did not count. And it was just, how do we think anything has changed, especially when in 2013, the Voters' Right Bill has been changed so that now the states can do legally what they were doing illegally.
Right.
So we cannot wait to 2020. And why should we wait? This man has lied to everybody. We teach our children how to tell the truth. When you see someone who is doing something, you stand up and you say. How come we are not standing up and saying something? Mm-hmm. We know that Trump he is not a legitimate president.
Right.
He got in through a corrupted system. So we cannot wait to 2020 because it's just another means for them to continue their fascist ways.
Right.
We have to step up, and I know that persons, as I continue to talk with those who are totally unaware of this movement and how they are excited about the idea of it, we just have to keep on, stay focused, and we have to keep moving because it is the change that is needed in this country, and it's going to change the manner in which our country, the system under which our country is being governed. This is what it's all about. Changing it so that humanity is concerned. It's not about America, it's for humanity. And our children are so special because they, at this point, have no future.
And they know it. That's why they're agitating too. But they can't achieve that under a fascist regime either. All the wonderful climate organizing and organizing against gun violence that I fully support. If we care about what they're doing with that, we have to be there with them to end this fascist regime.
Well, Anna Maria, I want to thank you for calling in. I know you're at a social gathering. We want to have you back in studio with us sometime soon on one of these webinars, and we could talk a little bit more. But thank you for calling in, and we'll talk soon, okay?
I look forward to being with you. Thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, you can clap. You clap. She can hear you too. So,
oh, buddy.
Yeah. I think we should wrestle ourselves with, and then we have a couple people in the room who we're going to bring up. But
yes.
We have a little bit more to do together, and I want to ask you. We talked about this December disruptions,
right?
And there's multiple meanings to that, and one of them is disrupting the fascist program, actually building resistance to that. I want to come back to that. It's very important.
Right.
But you were giving some emphasis earlier when we were talking earlier about the other kind of December disruption. So why don't you say what that means and how you see that?
Well, a few of the things that it means, first of all, you know, the circumstances in this country change rapidly, not just because the fascism is consolidating rapidly, but because of developments like the impeachment hearings, and now we're going into the holidays. And that's very important. We can't have the same kind of actions during the holidays that we would have during not the holidays. It's going to make some things easier, people easier to find in some places, and it's also going to make people harder to reach in some ways. So disruption is partly about finding creative, out of the box ways of protesting that use where we are to really forcefully drive in that these delusions have got to go. We've been tossing around the phrase, there is no Santa Claus, and he's not going to deliver a removal, impeachment and removal for you. If you want that to happen, we're going to have to do it. We have to, just like you always suspected, Santa Claus is us. Yeah.
It is. It's there. The theme is actually for December is there is no Santa Claus, and he's not going to remove Trump and Pence.
Right.
We've got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump Pence out now, December disruption. So disrupting the delusions.
Yes.
What are you talking about? What delusions do we need to disrupt?
Well, and I feel very strongly personally about this. I really do think that people are grasping at any straw that comes by. And it is straws at this point. Trump has committed so many violations of humanity law, international law, national law, things that he could and should be tried in The Hague for. Mm-hmm. And he's done it in broad daylight. We really didn't even need this business with Ukraine. There are 1,000 other things he's done that are perfectly impeachable. And yet we act as if there's still some smoking gun that we haven't found somewhere in these transcripts and these phone calls. That tells me that this is not really about the facts of what he's done. We know what he's done. We know what he's doing, and we unfortunately have a pretty good picture of what he wants to do. Instead, we are grasping at the notion that there is still some formal, proper, peaceful process that the people above our heads can fight out for us so that we don't have to get into the mess of this. Unfortunately, we are already in the mess of this. Mm-hmm. Children are in the mess of this. You know, people in Kurds in Syria are in the mess of this. Children in Yemen are in the mess of this. So many things this regime is doing have already destroyed lives and will destroy more, and are doing so much to us in our hearts and minds already. And the way we're normalizing, the way we're growing to accept this, because humans are magnificent survival machines. We will adapt and find ways to live under a fascist regime unless we clean it out now. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. And I really think we have to target these delusions like a laser. We have to reveal that the figures they're looking to as their saviors, because every month it's a new savior. You know, it was Mueller, it was Comey, Christine Blasey Ford, you know, Pelosi. These, you know, some of these are wonderful, admirable people, but they cannot save us when we will not save ourselves. And yet we keep putting them up on pedestals and waiting for them to fix everything for us. And again, they're just human beings. And I'm pretty convinced by now that most of them are just as confused and frightened as we are. They're nothing without our support. So we have to get rid of these, we have to cast down these idols, not because they're bad people, not because we can't admire them or follow them, but because they can't do it all for us. So that's another thing that we have to disrupt. We have to show that the heroes are mere human beings.
Yeah, I think when we talk about disruptions, It is, and we will come to the disrupting the program and the march of fascism and the normalization of fascism. This has to be, look, it has to be brought back to people's minds, because people have learned to turn their heads. They have learned to go about business as usual and think about the dailies, the humdrum dailies of life.
The sunrises,
become,
the sunsets,
become more pressing to them and more interesting to them than the monumental world historic changes and horrors being hammered down. So we do have to force people to look at it and to confront the magnitude of it. It's very important. And so we will talk about that. But I think with the disruptions of the delusions, I really agree with what you're describing about actually dislodging people's denial, their clinging to false hopes and easy, the notions of painless progress that somebody else is going to handle. Easy
answers. Yeah.
And I think it we're saying this not to give you the itemized list, but because a lot of times it's actually interesting what Anna Maria was talking about.
Yes.
She goes out, everybody loves the flyer.
Right.
Well, we wear the sticker. I mean, probably we have some people watching in Trump hotbeds, and it's probably not the case there, but here in New York, you wear that Trump Pence sticker. People all Saturday, every Saturday, they come up, they want the sticker. They want to put it on all over the country. Thumbs up. This is great. They're not joining.
Right.
Well, some are, but not nearly enough. Most are like, oh, thumbs up, I'm with you. And then they walk away and they're not really with us.
Right.
So what's the contradiction there? What are they? We want everybody to get under the hood of this with us. What is it that's making people say, yeah, Trump is an outrage, Pence is an outrage, I'm with you? What is there to work with there? And then where's the disconnect? What are people thinking I'm with you means if they don't see the need in a moment of fascism all over the world? People are rising up and driving out hated regimes. We are saying it's needed here, and you are sitting on the sidelines, so you're not with us.
Right.
So what do we need to dislodge? This is, and I think there are ideological elements of this. There's the selfishness, the individualism, it's not happening to me, so I can turn my head, which needs to be challenged. Oh, there's risk if I get out there. It might be scary. That elevating yourself before humanity, we need to struggle over that. So there's ideological questions, and there's probably more that if we work together, we can discern what some of them are. And then there's political delusions.
Right.
2020 will take care of it, or like you were just saying, Mueller, Comey, Pelosi, the hero of the week.
Right.
Which, in your view, they may be good people trying.
Some of them are
trying their best. In my view, as somebody with a view of this system as an imperialist system, I think the role of the Democrats is as a ruling class party, and they care more about maintaining order for their system, even if it's the order of fascism, than they do about justice, if that means the kind of upheaval it will take to dislodge a Trump-Pence regime through mass struggle. So, we can have, and we do have struggle over how we understand that, but the idea that you should wait and gamble the future of humanity on what the Democratic leadership is going to do after they've shown you time and time again they're conciliating. This is something we have to disabuse people of.
Right. I mean, we Sansara and I, coming from very different political perspectives, we have had some very heated discussions about, what's in the Democrats' minds, what they think they're doing. And, until we get a psychic on the board, we can have that debate forever. But what we can't argue about is what they are doing and not doing. And the fact is that what the Democrats, let's not even talk about the Republicans, what the Democrats are doing right now is not going to save the country from Trump. It can't. And they know it. And it's pretty clear that they know it. What they don't want to say is what we should know, which is that the third force that's missing in this equation is us. And that is the way it's meant to be. Their power is meant to come from us. The law is meant to come from us. Our values and our human rights are meant to come from us. If we're not there for those things, then how can we expect our representatives to reflect that? And this is a time when we need to get out and remind them. And we need to get out and let them know that one way or another, this is unacceptable. This cruelty, this hate, this fascism, this destruction of the structures that we would use to remove a tyrant is unacceptable.
So, I want to say briefly something about the impeachment, and then I want to lay out sort of the key tent poles of the December plan, and then we have a couple people in the room we want to invite into the conversation to start going a little further on what are we up against, what do we need to transform, which is the subject, as we keep emphasizing, of these meetings on Sunday, to work on these problems together. The thing I wanted to say about the impeachment is, I guess there's different dimensions of this. One, the actual way that Trump and Pence and the regime has responded to this is by furthering their fascist agenda.
They double down.
They've declared war on a lawful impeachment process. They've declared it illegitimate. They've stormed the impeachment hearings. They've invoked civil war. They've invoked treason and execution of the whistleblower. They are not, you look at Nixon, you look at Bill Clinton, when they were impeached, they were conciliatory.
Yeah.
They were defensive. They said, no, I didn't do those things. And
these guys are at open war with the whole process.
Yes. And they are not complying with the subpoenas. So one, if they survive this impeachment, it will be through most likely furthering the consolidation of fascism.
Oh, yes.
And it's very dangerous. Two, it's very significant the Democrats have been compelled to open an impeachment hearings, and it creates an opening, but the terms on which, and I think this is one of the delusions we have to deal with, the terms on which they are fighting to impeach has got people tracking all this. The very narrow,
very precious, detailed
of Ukrainian foreign policy,
right?
Which does include really fascistic things that Trump did, but it has obscured and erased and eclipsed in the minds of way too many people the monumental, towering, and right before the light of everybody's face crimes of fascism, which the Democrats are proving once again. They will not call out this fascist program. If we want that called out, if we want that ended, it has to be in the streets. And so this is one of the delusions we have to challenge.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that in and to try to lay out very briefly. Here's our vision, and it's the tent poles, and it's a concept that we want everybody to get creative with. But we'll have these meetings on Sunday, and we'll sum up some of what we've accomplished. We really want you to be at these meetings, but also to invite the people who've been in the chapters, who've been at the protests. Invite everybody on your list, invite on social media, put it out broadly, but spend the time especially with those who have taken their first steps into this meeting and into this movement. Because we really do need to strengthen and forge the cores that are going to tackle these challenges together. It's really important. So, who should be at this? Everybody who wants to stop the Trump-Pence regime and drive out fascism, but especially we should put our effort to the people who have taken their first steps in, and other organized forces who have started checking this out and relating to this or expressed interest. Everybody who is fighting for any dimension of justice around any issue needs to take up the out now demand, because with fascism consolidated, there's no future for immigrant rights. There's no future for the environment. There's no future for any of these struggles.
Women's rights, police brutality.
So at these meetings, we're gonna sum up and take stock in what we have accomplished, putting this movement on the map, and we're gonna confront together and open up the challenge of how do we shake millions out of their complicity and into the streets with us? And what are the ideological roadblocks we need to disrupt? And what are the political frameworks we need to disrupt? And then what's the modeling of going right up against the fascist program too that we need to do? If like Ann Coulter's speaking in Berkeley tonight and there's protests happening, Refuse Fascism is in the middle of it, it's very important. Or People with the Revolution tour just went up, and they're also bringing the message of Refuse Fascism up to Syracuse University, where there's been an outbreak of Nazi threats against students, a whole campaign of this, and there's students standing up. So we need to go up against that as well. We can't chase everything, but we have to be standing up and bringing people into the streets against the fascism, against the normalization. And some of that is banner drops in malls or flash mobs on the trains or different things that are creative, and there is no Santa Claus.
Right.
And he's not going to remove Trump and Pence. That's on us. We have to bring this creatively in the holidays. There's 3 other things concretely, which is we began to model the week after week protests, and we want to continue to manifest in a regular way. So we have the plan that Saturday, December 7th, that it would be a day of mass outings in New York. It might be training to drive out Trump and Pence, and we'd bring hundreds of people, or maybe 50 people, however many we could gather, but maybe 150 people to go on the trains as a flash mob, as a roving band, spreading the word, disrupting the calm, calling on people to join the fight against fascism. That you would rally, maybe you're in Atlanta and you have, you do it some other way. You have, wherever you have train systems, the Loop in Chicago, you go on the trains or you go on the buses or you go where there's transit, public transit, and we get out in a mass way on the mass transportation, Saturday, December 7th, all over the country, spreading out now and disturbing the air, being a bit rowdy, being a bit, maybe you write anti-Trump carols that you sing, but you're going out as a crew and amassing others and shaking things up and drawing people in. And so it's protest, but it's spreading. And then that would be building for December 14th, where we would have more centralized protests and marches on the theme of enough, basta ya, Trump, Pence out now. And we would hold marches, rallies, more along the lines of what we have been doing, but on a bigger scale, that we would aim to make a leap in size and in breadth. And that we would use the week after week, 7th and 14th manifestations to get that continual protest going. But the 7th would be in a form that is helping build up the muscles in the organization and spread the word to make the 14th an even bigger jump. And through this, we also want to recommend that in the areas, everybody plan holiday parties. Whether that be dinners or dances, or there's music or performances or a potluck. Games. It could be a lot of different things, karaoke, but also, there you go. People gathering, getting to know each other, and fundraising in the holiday season and forging this movement. So we want December 7th, mass outpourings. You can come up with a good name for it in New York. If it's on the train, it could be training to drive out Trump and Pence. It could be something else somewhere else. But in the mass transit on the 7th, on the 14th, protests across the country, and hopefully in more than 15 cities now. And then a holiday party wherever you are that's fundraising and forging your movement, and all interspersed with, and we want kind of a spirit of friendly competition around the country with people finding different creative ways to do December disruptions. Right. And they, like I said, they could be flash mobs in a shopping mall. They could be banner drops on the freeway. They could be a lot of different kinds of things. Be fun, be outrageous. Yeah, they could be when Trump appears somewhere, an important protest. They could be, if there's a town hall discussing impeachment, they could be going and bringing a scroll with the full crimes of the Trump-Pence regime that are not being heard in the impeachment hearing, and say, why is this not being heard about? Where we've got to raise our voices. It's just disrupting that delusion. There's got to be different ways. And so we're going to be working together on this, but we want people to put themselves to this around the country this Sunday and really let it rip. We want a lot of viral moments in December. Right. So with that kind of setting out our vision, and we're going to be tomorrow writing a lot of this down and sending around guidance for the meetings. But with that, we have 2 people in the room we want to bring up. We got about 10 minutes left. And we want to hear. No, you stay. Okay. Yeah. We're going to just squeeze in. We're going to make the whole. We got room. We got room. We got the couch. Occupied. We're going to occupy the couch. Occupy the couch. So
I've matched the couch.
You do match the couch.
Awesome. Do you have enough room over there? I think we need
just
a
gonna
little
sit
bit
You
more.
need more room.
None.
Oh no! Come get in the.
Scoot.
You got it.
Scoot.
I fell off the edge. There we go. Here. All right. So we have in studio Amaris and Jamel.
Hello.
Who are actually both members of the New York City chapter and both artists who have been part of this. And Jamel is a member of the Revolution Club as well. And You guys want to introduce yourselves? Anything else?
Sure. I mean, I'm still processing that there's no Santa Claus.
Reeling from that news.
It's gonna be a different kind of holiday for sure. No, but I'm a Marissa, organizer for Fuse Fascism, artist, and a content marketer, but someone who does a lot of work particularly around social media. Right.
What's up? I'm Jamel. You see me around buzzing about. I'm a rapper, revolutionary, and I an interactive artist. And yeah, I mean, we were out and have been out as a part of Refuse Fascism since the jump, and with Out Now, in particular over the past couple of weeks, really, being part of like stepping in to help to organize things that have been happening in New York, and to be out and help to like lead people who have been out in New York on a microphone, chanting, etc.
Yeah. So you guys have been listening to this whole conversation, and I think we were talking earlier too. We've all had this experience of thumbs up, we're with you, we love what you're doing, but then not stepping in. And and what's your sense? What are you identifying in terms of, well, actually, two questions. If there are things that you want to appreciate and help take stock of that we have forged and what we have changed, I don't think we should step over these things, even if they are not on the scale we want, because you don't grow them if you don't see them.
Right.
But so that might be the first question. Then I'll come to what are we up against.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's obviously like peaks and valleys in terms of the participation from week to week. I think one of the things that stood out to me as a really positive was the consistency of having this Wednesday as a forum where people can understand what's happening on a national level. People can hear from different voices and really get a sense of like what happened the week before and what's to come for the following week, and then how we can quickly, kind of when looking at the week to come, how we can get organized and creative about how we approach that particular week. So I thought that the consistency of that has been very helpful, even as someone who's been involved longer pre-webinars. I think it's something that should continue, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would definitely underscore everything about like the webinar and how it just really presents the case for a national movement, right? And people feeling and belonging like part of a national movement. I mean, I think some things that have been really cool, which we shared a little bit earlier, were like this thing of like going out from the jump and being like, this isn't a one-time thing from the very first beginning of it, while at the same time having like, this is the launch of something, and we're going to launch it with 5 of these consecutively in a row. And we're looking at this model of Puerto Rico. We're looking at this model of Hong Kong, and being very specific about like the form and the model that we actually wanted to like emulate and bring here, the need for it. I think, just really, posing that in front of people and holding that up as an actual like model that can be replicated and that can actually be brought here to the United States from the international arena, I think was a really, was a way to make it like just really real and really tactile for people. I mean, I think there's some really cool things that came out of it too in New York, where you had like the groupings of mothers that helped to organize and bring together, as well as like the DJs that were present last week, DJs for Out Now, and A-Track and Nicole Sky and DJ Lindsay organizing them with Ellie Escobar, just having collectives of people that said, I am this collective or this type of person for Out Now. Right. Thinking, having that magnified in a kind of way, people going back to their neighborhoods over the span of those 5 weeks and then coming back out with those groupings. Yeah. If you have a dynamic like that start to magnify and effervesce on its own, then you could really have something that started to leap into like the 10,000s, millions of people range.
Yeah. So, we were like, we joke about this because we have a small dog, and we brought him out with us,
and in the studio,
and he's in the studio. but he had, the stickers that people love, and I've been wearing, but every week he wore a sticker on the back of his jacket.
Mhm.
And last Saturday we had, like someone who came up to us like randomly and wanted their dog to have wear the sticker too. And it's funny because it's like such a little thing, but it's like, you talk about the grouping and Mamas Against Fascism and DJs Against Fascism and all of these collectives that were formed just, over the weeks
Dog parents
of doing this. But like, it was like, we were joking like, oh, we have like Dogs Against Fascism. And for what it's worth, it's like, a lot of people were photographing like, him in the sticker. And it's just like how much, like how many more, there's students obviously and all these other groups. But I do think that those affiliations create a sense of like, passion and eagerness to sort of participate and feel like you have a role. So yeah,
definitely.
I think
I'm
also,
looking at you.
Oh no, I was gonna keep ripping.
I'm looking
Go
at
ahead.
you.
Go ahead. We're all looking at you.
Yeah, no, and I think also hearing from a lot of different voices was really important. There was particularly the second Saturday here in New York, we had a speak out that represented a wide range of perspectives, and I think it was really just good for people to hear that and to hear how different people come into this movement, why they're here, why they're participating, why they see like where the sense of urgency comes for them. And so like I thought that like having the speak out be sort of central to the rallies was really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think now we should look at what are we running into, what are we up against? Because obviously we all know we need to get bigger.
Yeah.
Out Now, not we like it's our thing, but Out Now needs to get bigger, including a lot of people who are part of other movements need to take up Out Now.
Right.
Exactly.
And, professional organizations need to take up Out Now. You can't be a civil liberties organization under fascism.
Right.
I mean, it's like a ludicrous concept. You have to drive out the Trump-Pence
Can't
regime.
abolish the prisons.
Yeah, you're not going to do any of these other things. So we need to win blocks of society, waves of people into this movement, and to do that we have to get it known more, but we also have to know what we have to disrupt. What are the December disruptions? What are your sense from the people you've talked to, or where are you left scratching your head that we need to go and try to solve? What is stopping these people? It doesn't make sense. They seem like they're going to do it, but then they don't. What do you? How do you see it?
I thought, Sarah, that you raised some interesting points about how, like, some of the reasons why people, like, things that are keeping people from participating. And Rhea brought up, in the case of New York, we had the weather, like, that wasn't working in our favor. But then I think also, like you said things like this idea that someone else is going to do it for you. I think that there are themes in all of this, from the conversations that we're having with people, as well as, like, frankly, like, people that are friends that we've invited and, were eager. Some of them participated, but others didn't, like, really interrogating that and getting, like, kind of some understanding of what the themes are there, and then using that to inform what December looks like and beyond, right? Because I do think that it's important to understand really, like, where are people coming from, like what are their reservations.
Exactly.
And we can speculate about it, but I do think it's important to have that information. So whether, I don't know if it looks like a survey or what, but
I was going to say, I actually think between now, it's Wednesday, and Sunday, one of the most important things that all of us could be doing to prepare for these meetings is to actually ask people.
Yeah.
And so that the more that we have a sense of why are you happy that we're doing it? Why are you not also doing it? What do you think of the impeachments? Do you think we can wait till 2020? What do you think about what people are doing around the world, driving out regimes? Why shouldn't we do that here? Why aren't you doing it here? Like, there's a lot of questions we should be probing with people. And the more that we do that, one, you might actually be able to move people to a place where they do want to come. You might find out and be able to address it and build the participation in the weekend. But at minimum, and we should aim to do that. I don't want to be dismissive about that, but at minimum, we need to come in with a lot more raw understanding data that, like she was saying, puzzle pieces where no one has, and I just want to say, and then I'll open it to you, Jamel, to speak to what you see us up against, but no movement has cracked this.
Right.
You know,
That's right.
I heard a very disappointing thing that there was another group that was doing some kind of impeachment rally tomorrow here in the city, and they canceled it because they felt that they weren't going to get that many people out. And I think that they should have thrown all in with what we were doing and with Out Now. But I want to see all these protests stronger and more powerful. And it is not, it is not good if people are canceling. And my point being less to evaluate whether they should have done this or that thing, but that every movement is struggling right now with the fact that people are way too passive. That's the point. So that's something we have to crack. And we have to come in with as rich an understanding of it as we can to this weekend. And then we need really some wild plans to shock people out of their complacency.
Right.
So what do you think, Jamel?
Yeah, I mean, I just took the words right out of my mouth. Here's a hot take. I think the movement is in its own way, frankly. And, I think that there's a lot of passivity that's happening on the left, and amongst, forces that are out, frankly, in control of a lot of that. And I think, we really shouldn't underestimate, a few things. One is definitely this impeachment and how it actually dovetails, what we were calling for and driving people out, and how people are seeing that and seeing this not as a window of opportunity to press on the gas and really and the expression of go for the jugular in order to drive this regime out, but seeing it as a time where this is actually where, all right, well, they got it. AOC, Nancy Pelosi, they got it.
What's on streaming?
Yeah.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of that, or I can register my complaint and that'll be enough. And then there is also a thing of like over the past couple of years, we were talking about this. You've had the March for Our Lives, the Women's March. You had the Climate March. You had, the March for Science. You have almost and this is a great thing, right? But then under this system, it ends up finding a kind of corner to exist in like a protest ecology where it just, where people are allowed to have and have this steam valve, and people, they see it as, the third thing that's in the kind of way this is like the individualism and, is a very big thing. People get told since a very young age to just shoot for your dreams and believe in your dreams while ignoring the context of and what's happening in the world.
Right.
And, there is a lot of that actually gets, that gets manifested, not in any kind of crude or, you have friends that are very approving of what you do. Oh, yo, I see you out there, yo, they'll hit you up.
Yeah.
Right. I love what you're doing out there. Right. But they won't come out.
Right.
Because that's your thing. And that's exactly how I do or how I relate to it. But I'm really glad that there is somebody doing it, but there isn't the understanding that in order to do this thing, this isn't my thing. I loved how you began this program. And I think we have to actually be doing a lot more of that kind of earnest truth telling to people and challenging them, where it's like, I should be working on my comic book, but guess what? We're dealing with a fascist regime, and I actually have to, put this down to deal with that.
Right.
It's like, that's actually people showing, and people who step forward to this, everybody here, do we have other things? 10 years ago, we didn't think about coming on a webinar and saying, hey, we really want to organize people across this country to fight against fascism. No, we're dealing with that. And we've actually made a choice to do that, and being clear about that with people, while at the same time, we're going to have a lot of close proximity and family time over the next couple of weeks. We're going to have to be really friendly with family, but then we're also really going to have to actually challenge them. Like, I know I'm going to have some conversations with but I have to have some conversations with some family members that are like, well, okay, I know you see me doing this, but why haven't you thrown in on this? What are you kind of seeing? And, and these times actually demand more of us,
And I just thought about that when it comes to family time. Like, it would be an interesting experience to spend that time. Like, people watch movies, and it's like just a time where people watch a lot of television. Like, what about turning on the square? Like, just starting to talk and see those examples together, I think are really impactful, so that people can actually realize, like, this is possible. It's been done in recent history, like there've been, you know, some lessons learned and things that we can all like experience together. But I think there is something about getting around like the holiday table or whatever, like spending the time after eating like turkey or whatever, like watching these things and so.
You mean the square as in the movie about Tahrir Square? Yeah, definitely.
And it's on Netflix.
Yeah, it is. You know, two things, and I want to bring in a couple comments. I think we're going to wrap it up, but I wanted to say, you brought up, Jamel, the individualism and some of the, I think, benign. It's not always the most nasty. I want to fuck over everybody else, but I'm pursuing my dreams and I'm not thinking about others. You know, I'm not doing harm, but I'm not feeling responsible. And I do want to highlight and recommend very strongly. There's a new piece, a new publication from Bob Avakian called "Hope on a Scientific Foundation." It's at revcom.us, and in it, BA goes very deeply at this individualism, the delusion of painless progress, the BEB, what we call the BEB, bourgeois
electoral
thank you,
bullshit.
bourgeois electoral bullshit, the dead end that keeps you tied up in thinking on the terms of the system and not acting in ways that disrupt that and change things fundamentally. So this is a piece that really goes a lot at some of that individualism, a lot of the ideological questions, and whatever perspective you're coming from. I think this is a very deep piece, and I recommend it for everybody who's trying to figure out why are people going along. It's got a lot to offer here. So I wanted to commend that too. I wanted to just say, we have some really good comments here, and we are going to look through them. Somebody is saying, and it's a good idea, maybe we should come up with a list of 10 questions that we could all use to go out and ask people that we know.
Yes, that would be scientific.
One is saying, and if you have questions, please type them in. We can, if you have suggestions for those. We have some we could write down, but you guys might have some. Please type them in. One is saying, children, cover your ears. There's no Santa Claus. It's up to us. but we should really work with that. We should have a lot of fun in the holiday season.
Exactly.
With this theme.
Exactly.
There's a lot of other comments. We are going to have to find a way to share some of them. I did want to add, Jamel, stay leaned in so you're visible.
Yeah, that's just
okay,
me.
I was looking at you. I wasn't paying attention to the camera. Holidays. The conversations you guys are talking about, and sometimes arguments, and appropriately so, but also holidays are fundraising time. And a lot of people should join us in the streets. They should also join us with their resources. And it makes all the difference. We need to print, and we want these for the holidays too, thousands of t-shirts so that they're gifts, so that we have out now, Trump, Pence out now all over the place, hoodies for the winter.
Hoodies.
Beanie caps. We want bumper stickers. We need all kinds of materials. We need to pay for the office. We need to pay for the stages. We need to pay for the banners that are going to be dropped over freeways. We need to pay for a lot of stuff. We want to ask
we need them in fluorescent, like orange, the color of the stickers.
Yeah.
The beanies.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just
there's
something about the color
for
of
hunters.
the stickers that people
for hunters in the woods.
You can't ignore that.
So you can give now, and I would ask you to do so. I understand we have some 400 people watching on Facebook, and that means there's probably a lot of new people on Venmo. On Venmo, it is at refuse-fascism. You can make a donation right now at refuse-fascism, or go to donate.refusefascism.org. And to everybody in the chapters, everybody who's organizing, really, we're gonna work on this nationwide, but the holidays are a fundraising time. Go to family, go to friends, and then we're going to do a lot of this while we're out disrupting the holiday shop till you drop mentality, bringing truth. We're going to say drop something in the bucket and join us. So is there anything else you want to say to sign us off, any of you?
I was just going to say one thing, which is that if there's like one lesson that I would take for myself from the last 5 weeks, is like take what you're doing already, if you're organizing, if you're listening, and you're doing, something, and do a little bit more. It actually makes a difference if everyone steps it up on their own as part of organizing. And that goes for donations too. Like if if you're giving, you know, $20, you know, a month, like step it up, like do a little, just build on what you're doing already. I've challenged myself to speak more. This is not something that I've ever done, and it doesn't, you know, come naturally to me, but I do think that it's important that, you know, you hear from more voices. So that's something that I've challenged myself over the last few weeks to do. So I think to the extent that you can, do that. So
yeah, I think actually I want to bounce off of what you just said, because you know, we're talking about forging the cores and about the people who've come forward over the last several weeks, and like the new folks that are joining us for the webinar. You know, this is what it looks like. Is, you know, I'm supposed to be drawing my comic, but I've been on the editorial board for a while now, and Amaris, Amaris, that's okay. Anyway, sorry, is an excellent speaker.
Yeah.
And next time she's just going to have this whole webinar to herself. Maybe not entirely to herself, but you know, we are growing people to be leaders of other people, right? And you know, we're all learning this as we go, but we're drawing each other in further, and then the people we draw in will draw in other people, and we'll all discover capabilities that we didn't know we have, and this is how it works. And so now we have 2 more awesome webinar presenters that we didn't have before,
and a mascot.
And Buddy makes his cameo. Buddy
Yeah.
makes his cameo.
Yeah.
So listen, it is the outgrowth of, if there's no savior coming from the Democratic Party or from on high, and therefore we're going to have to do it, and everybody's going to have to step up. And so we really have forged something very important. We've made a real beginning, and it matters to people all over the world and generations that have not yet been born if we succeed. So we have to come together this weekend, this Sunday, invite people, be there, ask around, learn as much as you can coming in, and then let's make some serious, audacious, daring plans to do December disruptions. There is no Santa Claus. He's not going to remove Trump and Pence. It's on us. Trump, Pence, out now. December disruptions, disrupt the normalization, disrupt the fascism, disrupt the delusions, and gather forces to drive out the Trump-Pence regime. Right. That's our plan. Be part of it. Nothing matters more.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
All right.
So
thanks so much, you guys.